Hello, everyone. Welcome to my February wrap up. I have 12 books to talk about. I'm going to start with the ones that I don't have physical copies for because if I don't, I'll probably forget about them. So I read two Amazon original short stories. The first one was written by Lisa Unger and it's called Let Her Be. This was about a man who had tried to commit suicide because he had just broken up with his girlfriend and he was a little bit obsessed and stalkery with her, and he now recognizes that he was in the wrong and that he did a lot of things that he probably shouldn't have, but he's still kind of pining after her a little bit, and he's looking at her Instagram and Facebook and all this stuff, but it's just kind of going through his journey. And for the most part, I liked this one. The ending was okay, and I predicted it. I saw it coming. So it wasn't anything like earth-shattering, so I'd probably give this 3 stars. And then the next short story, I guess this one isn't an Amazon original, sorry. This is just a short story by Darcy Coates, and it's called The Returned, or Once Returned. I don't know. It'll be right here and you can see what it's called. But anyways, this is about a woman whose husband had passed away, but then like 3 weeks later, he shows up on her doorstep and he's alive. But there's something very wrong with him. He doesn't act the same. He doesn't act like her husband. And so she's kind of trying to figure out what's going on. And this one I really enjoyed. I always enjoy the writing style from Darcy Coates. And I thought that the story was pretty interesting. I will say that the end was a little bit too ambiguous for me. I like to have all the answers by the end, and this one didn't necessarily give me that. So I'd probably give this a 3.5 or maybe a 4 star just based on enjoyment. So the next one is I finally finished all 12 volumes of the prequel for Blood on the Tracks. So apparently the first 12 volumes isn't like the main story. It like jumps ahead in time by the 13th volume and he's like an adult by then. So I just read the ones where he was a kid. And I'm going to have a little bit of a unpopular opinion on this book, or this manga series, sorry. So I really did enjoy it, and I understand why people really, really like this and is like obsessed with it. I, however, was not obsessed with it. I did like it, and I did enjoy my time reading it, but at the same time, when I read the first volume, I was like, what? Because I thought it was so boring. And then like the very like last 3 pages was like crazy and insane, but you had to get through the whole volume to get to that part, and the rest of it was just like very mundane. And so I was like, okay, well, whatever, it's like a prologue kind of, I'll just go to the next one. And the one issue I have with this is I understand that the mangaka puts a lot of emotion into his illustrations and into the art, and I understand that completely. But at the same time, I really feel like I need more dialogue and more story in my manga because I could read it in like 10 minutes and there's really not a lot of written words on the page. You're just looking at the art. And I do like the art and I do enjoy it and I think you did a good job, but at the same time, it was a little bit unsatisfying for me. Like, because they're each like $13 and you're only getting like 15 minutes of enjoyment from it. So I just felt like the price point wasn't all that satisfying, if that makes sense. It didn't feel quite worth the price point, so I ended up getting the rest of them from the library. But I did like it. I'm not saying that I didn't, because I did. But at the same time, I feel like 3 of those volumes could be put into one and it would be a little bit more satisfying, if that makes sense, at least when it comes to the price point. And as far as the story, I want to get into some slight spoilers, so if you have not read this series, then go ahead and click off. I'll put a banner up that says when the spoiler is up so that you'll know. If you don't know what the story is about, it's about a toxic relationship between the mother and the son. And I don't condone what the mother did at all. She's a terrible, terrible person. But at the same time, I did have some sympathy for her. And I don't think a lot of people do, because it's very obvious that she has mental health issues. And it was very annoying that the husband wasn't doing anything about it, even though clearly she had problems. Like she would straight out tell him and babble on about her issues and her problems, and he's just like, what's going on? And then do nothing. And that pissed me off because it was obvious that she had postpartum depression and she had suicidal thoughts and tendencies, and she was really struggling, and nobody was acknowledging it. Nobody was helping her. And the son was the one that was receiving the bad end of that. So, like, if the dad had stepped in and helped his wife, it would have helped his wife and his son, and they would have been a lot better off. And, and so I don't know, I did have sympathy for her. Like, like I said, I'm not condoning anything that she did. It was terrible. But at the same time, I can see where she's coming from. And I wish that she would have gotten help. But obviously, that's not what the story's about. And also, I've heard a lot of people be like, oh, he found this girl that he's falling in love with, and isn't that so sweet? And isn't that so nice? I disagree. I thought that in the beginning, and I was rooting for their relationship, but I thought she was pretty terrible too, because he was already going through these terrible things with his mother, and then she comes in and she's obviously using him to get back at her father because she has her own issues. And, she kind of uses him for her revenge against her father and kind of sexualizes him and stuff. And I thought that was pretty terrible because that's the last thing he needs in his life right then. And so I did not root for the relationship, and I didn't really like her. So you can go ahead and disagree with me on that, but that's how I feel. I am still intrigued by the series, and I would like to continue, but yeah, I just wish it had a little bit more dialogue, a little bit more story to it, but I am enjoying it. So I would probably give the series, as of right now, probably still a 4 because I did enjoy it and I still think it's good, but I wouldn't give it a 5. So I read some books for Valentine's Day. The first one was Junie B. Jones and the Mushy Gushy Valentine. So this is obviously a children's book. I read this with my daughter. She has to read 20 minutes a day for school. And it was really cute. And I really loved these books when I was a child. I would go to the librarian at my school and she would read these out loud to us, and she'd have like a big bow in her hair and she'd do like the funny voices with it. And I always have good memories of that. So it was fun to be reintroduced into Junie B. Jones. And it was just a cute story about, when you were passing out Valentines at school and she had like a little crush that gave her a secret admirer Valentine, and stuff. But I thought it was really cute. But there is one part that I wanted to read to you guys because it's hilarious. And if you have children, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's so like how children think and act, and it was just dead on, and it was hilarious. So it says, Junie B., this is the teacher. Junie B., I have some good news for you, she said. Guess what I just found in the bottom of the Valentine's Day box? I sat up real quick because guessing games are my favorite, of course. A meatball, I said. Mrs. did a frown. No, Junie B., why would there be a meatball in the box? Think about it. What have people been putting into Valentine boxes all week? Valentine's cards, I said, real smart. Right, she said. And how many Valentines did you get today? 16, I told her. Yes, she said. You were missing one, weren't you? And so what do you think I found in the bottom of your box right now? This time I thought my hardest. A meatball, I said. Mrs. rolled her eyes up to the ceiling, and then I looked up there too, but I didn't see anything. Finally, Mrs. pulled a giant envelope from behind her back. No, this, Junie B., she said. This is what I found in the bottom of the box. I found this big envelope, and it's addressed to you. My mouth came open, very shocked. Then all of a sudden I clapped my hands, very thrilled. Hey, wait a second, that could be my missing Valentine. Mrs. looked funny at me. Bingo, she said, kind of soft. Yes, I shouted, bingo. Anyway, so I just thought that was really funny and cute because if you've ever tried to use logic with a child, they just don't get it, and it's so frustrating sometimes. So I thought that was really funny and cute. Okay, so then I read some R.L. Stine books. First we have The Girlfriend, and this one was about a guy that's been going out with his girlfriend since he was in 6th grade, and now he's in high school. So they've been going out since he's like 12, which is insane. So anyway, so this new girl shows up to school and he kind of thinks she's hot or whatever. And so his girl is out of town for the weekend. And so he ends up on this unplanned date with this girl. But then after the date, he's like, I really love my girlfriend and I want to stick with her. I don't want to turn this into anything. Well, the girl is not having it because she's obsessed with him now and she wants to be his girlfriend. And so she kind of stalks him. So the premise for this book was great. I really liked it. But the execution was just okay for me. It was not the best written, but I mean, it's an R.L. Stine book. Some of them are better written than others, and this just happens to be one of the ones that isn't. But I did enjoy it for the most part, so I'd probably give this like a 3.5. And then we have The Boyfriend. So this is just funny because one's the girlfriend and one's the boyfriend, Kudos on the titles. But anyways, so this is about a woman, or girl, I should say. She's a teenager. And she's going out with this guy and she doesn't really like him. So she decides to break up with him. But then he ends up falling off a cliff and dying. But then, as it says in this blurb, her boyfriend's back from the grave. So there's a little bit of a supernatural element, which you don't really see in R.L. Stine books very often. So I thought that was kind of fun and interesting. And this is the same as The Girlfriend, where it wasn't like the best written, but it was just kind of fun and cheesy or whatever. But I hated this protagonist. She's kind of like Reva Dalby from the Silent Night books, but Reva, I found her fascinating and interesting, and even though she was selfish and spoiled, I still liked her character. And this one, no. She's just very, very, very unlikable and mean and not redeeming in any way. And both the boyfriend and the girlfriend had the same problem where at the end it got pretty dark and I was like, wow, good for you, R.L. Stine. But then it was like immediately something else happens and it's not as dark as you thought it was. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I kind of wish he would have like gone for it and gone there because I think it would have been a better, stronger story. But I understand he was writing for kids, so I'm not like upset about it, but I was a little bit disappointed. So again, probably like a 3.5. Okay, and then I read What Feasts at Night, and this is the second in the Sworn Soldiers duology. I don't know if there's going to be more in the series or not. But anyways, this is the sequel to, what is it called? Shoot, I can't remember what the first one's called. Anyways, it's the one with the bunny on the cover. I'll put the title up here when I figure it out. But anyways, so this is following the same characters from the first book, but they've gone back home to Alex's house, and it's like a cabin in the woods. And when I get there, everything's like disheveled and dusty and things. And he's a little bit confused because he had a housekeeper that was taking care of things while they were gone. But it turns out that the groundskeeper, or not groundskeeper, the housekeeper had fallen ill and he had passed away. And so there was like a story about this creature that's like a horse, but also a witch or a woman. And she like sits on your chest and stills your breath while you're sleeping or whatever. So that's kind of what the story is about, is that folklore. And just like the first one, I really loved the atmosphere. The atmosphere was spot on. It was gloomy and bleak and gothic, and it was well written. But I don't think I connected with this one quite as much as the first one, and I felt like defeating the monster or whatever was way too easy. Like it made sense what happened, and so I didn't have any issues with that, but it just, I don't know. That's why I don't like novellas necessarily all the time, is because it just goes too quick and it's like you have all this build up and then bam, it's over. Like, I don't know, I just wanted a little bit more from the climax. But I did enjoy the characters, I did enjoy the story, just not as much as the first one, but I'd probably still give this about 3.5 or maybe bump it up to 4 stars. And then our book club pick for the book club that I'm in, it's called You'll Read Too. We chose The Hollow Dead by Darcy Coates this month, and this was a little bit of a disappointment, I'll be honest. It's my least favorite in the series so far. I can't really tell you anything about it because I don't want to spoil anyone that hasn't read the series. And we're really getting into like the meat of the story and getting too far in to really say much. My favorite part of this series has always been like the ghost stories and being in this cute little town and the characters and all of that. But this one kind of has that middle book syndrome that you get with series where it's not as fascinating as the setup, but you're not quite at the climax. And so it's just kind of that middling book where it just kind of, it doesn't necessarily meander, but it doesn't have that spark to it that the other ones had. It didn't have the charm, it didn't have the atmosphere, it didn't have the ghosts. Like she does help one of the ghosts in her graveyard, but it's very small, very easy, very much just like tacked into the story to say, oh, there is ghost story in here, like it didn't really fit the rest of the book. And we did find out more about Kira and her background, and so I enjoyed that, and I'm glad to have that. And there's something that happens at the beginning that was very intriguing. But I don't know, it was mostly just okay for me, and it kind of got a little bit more like sci-fi fantasy-ish, and so I didn't hate that, but it's not necessarily my favorite either. But it's definitely unique. I haven't read anything like this before, so there is that. But I'd probably give this maybe a 3.5 star. And then I read Mimi's Tales of Terror, and this was great. I really enjoyed this. This is Junji Ito's newest one. I thought it was somebody else that wrote it and then he just illustrated it, but I think it actually is Junji Ito. I think from his author's note at the back, it sounds more like it's a retelling of somebody else's stories. And so he took somebody else's stories and then just retold it and made it his own. And then you have like a bonus story at the end. But I thought this was great fun. In Junji Ito fashion, some of the stories just end too quickly. They're just like build up and it's great and then the end. And I kind of hate that, but it's kind of frustrating. But for the most part, I really enjoyed this collection. There's 3 stories that are my favorites. Let me get to the front so I can tell you what they're called. So my favorite stories in here were Grave Placement, Seashore, and the bonus story Monster Prop. I thought those 3 were the strongest and the most fun. So this was great. I really enjoyed it. And then in my Book of the Month Club box, I received First Lie Wins, and I also had a NetGalley arc of it, so I figured I better read it. So this isn't the kind of story that I normally gravitate towards. This is more like a heist thief type book. I don't know how to explain it, which isn't something I normally gravitate towards. But I actually really enjoyed this. I thought it was really well written. I thought the character made sense and she had a lot of backstory, and it actually showed that she was what she was. Like sometimes authors say, she's a thief or she's an assassin or she's a whatever, but you don't feel like they really are. You're like, she doesn't act like I would think that an assassin acts. So in this one, she really felt like she was what she was, if that makes sense. And so she has what's called a mark, and she's in this town pretending to be somebody else. And she's kind of falling in love with her mark that she's supposed to be getting dirt on. And so she's kind of conflicted about that. And then she's trying to take down the person that hired her because she thinks that she's probably going to wind up dead if she continues to go down the road that she's going down. But I wouldn't give this a 5 star, even though I find nothing wrong with it. It was well written, there's no plot holes, there's nothing bad about it. I still couldn't give it 5 stars though, because it's just not my type of book necessarily, and it's not something I was just obsessed over. But I really did enjoy it. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, and I thought it was really well written, and I think it's a good book. So I'd probably get it 4 stars. And then I had a buddy read with my friend Lilly Ashtree, and I will put her Instagram in my description box if you want to check out her stuff. She also does book reviews. We decided to buddy read Happy Place together, and this is the newest by Emily Henry, and I really love Emily Henry's romances. This one's a little bit long. It's like 380 pages, and it's a second chance romance, which isn't always my favorite trope. It's not something I gravitate towards, but I did enjoy this. I thought it was fun. I thought I had some funny moments. The middle got a little bit slow, and I was kind of like, okay, move along. But it had a lot of emotion in the end. Like I was actually getting teary-eyed in places. And not only just because of the romance, because of the friendships in this book. So there's a group of friends that go to this, I was going to call it a cabin, but it's not really a cabin, but it's like a beach house, I guess. And so it's kind of like a vacation spot, and her and her friends would go there every year. But it's the last time that they're going to be going there as a friend group because it's going to be sold and people are going to be moving on with their lives. And so it's kind of like their last hurrah. And so she never told her friends that her and the love interest, Win, had broken up. And so she doesn't want them to know now because she doesn't want to put a damper on their last weekend together. And she's there for the engagement of her other friends. And so she doesn't want to like cast a shadow over their happiness. So they're pretending to be together. And that's always fun because I do like the fake relationship trope. So could kind of wheedle at each other and tease each other because they know that it's not real, but the other ones don't. So that was kind of a fun aspect of it. And I really did enjoy this book. Like I said, I feel like it was maybe a little bit too long, but there was some chapters in the end where I just could not put it down and I would just gobble it up and I just had to keep reading. And I really wanted to know what was going on with the friend because you could tell that something was going on. And I really liked the friend group and I just thought it was a good book. It's not my favorite Emily Henry book. Book lovers will probably forever be my favorite, but I don't even know if I like this more than Beach Read. It's close. It's definitely better than People We Meet on Vacation. I did not like that one. So this is maybe my third favorite Emily Henry so far. But yeah, I enjoyed my time with it. And even though it was a long book, I flew through it. I don't know if that's because it was a buddy read and I was talking to Lily about it, but at the same time, it just flew by in my opinion. So I really enjoyed my time with it. I'd give this 4 stars. And then the last book I read in the month of February is The House of Last Resort by Christopher Golden. And I really enjoyed this. This is definitely a slow burn though. So if you're not into slow burn books, it's probably not going to be for you because it's quite slow. But it didn't bother me. I really enjoyed it. And I loved the setting. I loved being in Italy and being in this foreign country. And you could really feel that. It really comes through that they're in a foreign country and that they're in this small town that's kind of drying up and they need tourism and they need influx of young people, to move in, and you really get a feel and a sense for that. And I really enjoyed those aspects of the book. So this is a haunted house book, sort of. I don't know if I necessarily want to tell you what this actually is because I don't know if it's a spoiler, but it's not really a haunted house book. This couple, they become part of a program where the mayor would give you a house for only €1 if you would come move to this town in Italy and you could fix it up and remodel it and just make it new and kind of have an influx of new people moving in, and hopefully it would help with the tourism and all of this stuff. So they decide to move there, especially because the husband, his grandparents already lived there. And so he wants to be close to his grandparents because his parents have passed away. And so he wants to be by family. But it becomes apparent pretty soon after they move in that something is wrong with this house. And the grandmother was extremely angry when they moved in because she's like, I thought you were going to buy this other house. And I was really excited. Why did you buy this house? This house sucks. I mean, obviously it's more than just sucks. She's like, this house problems that you don't know about. And they just kind of roll their eyes and, oh, people from old Italy, they're just very superstitious. And they're like, this house is a lot bigger and a lot more beautiful than the house we were going to buy. So they don't understand at first why she's acting this way. But very soon they realize, oh, yeah, we probably shouldn't have moved here. But anyways, I thought this was good. I wouldn't put it up there with The Hollows because I really loved that book. But I do like this one more than Road of Bones. But I thought this was great. I had a really fun time with it. So I'd give it 4 stars. However, I will say that the very, very, very last chapter should have just never been written. It had an ending that I thought was heartbreaking, but it made sense and it was a good ending. And then they had one more chapter, and I was just like, why? Why did they do that? Because it like took away from the chapter before it. It kind of negated why an event even took place. And it's like, well, why did you even write that if you're just going to immediately be like, oh no, never mind. Really, this is the ending. I just thought that was dumb. I thought it was a weaker ending. And he could have had that last chapter, but maybe with a different character, and maybe it would have been okay. But the way he did it, I just thought it weakened the ending, and I was just like, yeah, why'd you do that? So that's the one thing I would say is I wasn't a big fan of the very last chapter. But outside of that, I enjoyed it. So there you have it. That's the last book that I need to talk about. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. And come enjoy talking about books with me. I mostly read horror and thriller books, and I will see you next time. See ya!